Welcome back to another episode of On the Fly, a Financial Literacy Institute podcast. Today, I am joined by Zach Owen, Olayinka Famadou, and our special guest of the day, Kevin Smith, who really is a leadership guru in himself. I met Kevin my freshman year at Akron as part of the Leadership Institute or the Institute for Leadership Advancement through the College of Business. And over the past 5 years, Kevin and I have had the opportunity to be involved in a lot of cool projects, a lot of cool events, and really I've been able to see Kevin make an impact on a lot of students. And that was really brought into fruition a couple weeks ago when we had a celebration for Kevin and for his departure from the University of Akron, where some of his closest colleagues were there to basically put on a surprise party for him and thank him for his time in Akron. And I know, especially me personally, Kevin has had a massive impact on my life and my college career. But now Kevin has left Akron, unfortunately, to go to Case Western Reserve University, where he is the Associate Dean of the Weatherhead College of Business. So before we get into Kevin and him talking about himself, Zach, Inka, how are you guys doing this week and how was your holiday?
Fantastic. This is my first Christmas as a married man, so I had the pleasure of jumping all around from family to family, and we had a blast. Spent a ton of time with friends and family. We had a lovely Christmas season, and it's just winding down now. So we had a great time.
Congratulations, Zach.
That's awesome. I love to hear
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, congrats, Zach. No, that's awesome. I love to hear that, Zach. In terms of myself, as the guys know, I actually got because all like the weather and the hullabaloo that's going on with with like airlines and stuff like that. My family and I we were in Tampa, Florida for the holidays, and we were supposed to come back Christmas Eve, but our flight got delayed, then it got canceled, and then we booked another flight through a different airline, got canceled again, and so we're waiting on two sets of refunds. So we actually came like 3 days late, so flew in or 2 days late, came back late last night and spent some time with my girlfriend's family here in Akron, Ohio. And we actually just a couple hours ago opened presents for their family. And with me right now in my hand, got them exclusive merch. They actually got me some FLI branded socks. I know it's probably not picking up because of the background, but it's really cool. So that might be an idea for in the future. But nonetheless, it was really cool to kind of kind of spend some extended time in Florida, try to make the best of it. But it was still pretty chilly. But overall, nice wholesome time with the family.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to get a pair of those socks too. So we gotta figure out where she got those. But I'm glad to hear you
Exactly.
guys are both doing well. And now our guest of honor, Kevin, how was your holiday? And give us a little bit of a background about yourself, a little bit more in depth than I went through.
Thanks. Yeah. So first, the holiday was good. I appreciate it, and I look forward to this time of year. I had a client years ago that he's like a CEO of something now. But I took him on, he was a VP, like an emergent VP, and I was hired to help him transition in that role. And he taught me something special that time when he'd always take the week of Thanksgiving off every single year. That was his time that he granted himself just to have the week. And I found that, I learned from him on that one. And I also I heard a speech a couple weeks ago by Joe Simperman, who's the president of Global Cleveland. And I'm on the board for Global Cleveland. And he was just casually giving the speech, and he mentioned this idea of this thing called Romjul, and it's Romjul. And like casually mentioning this idea, it's a Nordic tradition of one of their 5 Christmas celebrations. And what they do is they celebrate the time between Christmas, December 26th, and New Year, and they celebrate it as a time that's like the peaceful time where you don't really do much of anything. It's like the dead week. But you also have anxiety about what the year to come is can bring. So you're on one, it's like this dual prong emotion where you're feeling the sense of like gratitude and relief for all the things you've done. And now you're thinking about all the anxieties for the year ahead. And that resonated with me so much because every single year I get to this time of year and I love the Christmas and holiday season overall for whatever holidays there are. But I always find like I get anxiety like right about now about what's coming up. But I feel like now that I know that there's a word for it, then I'm really enjoying this week. I mean, I freaking love it. This is great. So I'm really leaning into the Rom Jewel. So maybe I'm like gonna become a Viking after this. Uh, so yeah, that's what I'm doing there right now. We have a 12-week-old, so it's fun to have like a newborn baby in the house. We have a 3.5-year-old and I have a 13-year-old. So I get the full spectrum of kids and presents and like family and all that stuff. So this is like the sweet spot of life. Your 40s is like that time when you're like, you've established yourself enough that you can be taken seriously in your career. You're young enough that you can still do like everything, and you're working your rear end off. So you feel like you're missing, like everything's like in this zone of intensity. But when you're like 20, like all you want to do is be established, right? And when you're like 70, all you want to do is be 40. So I guess this is like the sweet spot of life. The problem with that is like when you're in the spot of life, like you don't recognize it. So like we really have to take moments to pause and think like this is it. Like this is what everybody wants to be. So we're trying to really lean into that. But in that, Sean, you mentioned I work with college students, so I'm a career higher education like professional. So my job is like somewhere between the space of like faculty are your scholars and your teachers and your researchers. Then I am on the side of like I do those things too occasionally. Like I'll teach like in the MBA program and I'll teach in different courses and classes and I'll develop like educational programming. So I do have a master's in education, but I also have an MBA and I'm finishing a PhD as we speak. And so what that is all about, like I don't care to be the scholar. I'm not like that's not my focus is to produce the type of knowledge that like a scholar would do. I do that occasionally. But that's like all they do. And what I do is like I work to like basically move universities forward and whatever job I take usually has traditionally has been some sort of role that has not been fully established or has needed some sort of entrepreneurship and building of that. So I tend to see like, I don't think of, I would say it usually like this, but since I'm on a podcast about it, like I usually like try to be an entrepreneur in higher education. So like I try to take my entrepreneurial skills that I would have like in business, and then I apply them to a space that I'm completely insane, like in love with, like which is higher education. It changed my life. So in my role at Akron, I was hired 10 years ago to basically found a leadership institute with a big gift from Smucker, and they didn't have a plan for it. So they thought, let's hire somebody that will develop a plan, and that's what I did. And previously at Ohio University, I did the same thing where we didn't have a fund for it, but we wanted to start a leadership center for the entire university. And I did that over 7 years, and then Akron pulled me away. And then Case Western Reserve University called me while I was in a grocery store parking lot in September of this past year, and I didn't think I was going to look for anything else. I had fully intended to be at Akron for at least probably just 5 more years as I finished the PhD, and I don't really think about like leaving. And they had this associate dean position, but it had a whole lot of work to do. It's a great school of management. The Weatherhead School of Management. Case is an awesome university, but higher education right now is at a time of like critical transition. It's not this in its like sixth iteration. I mean, it's changed constantly for like since 1636. It's just in a new iteration, and I like being a part of that. And so Case asked me if I would come and lead a whole department with their new dean, who's also what I would consider to be a hell of an entrepreneur. Andrew Medvedev and JV Silvers are co-deans. They're like amazing leaders. And so I saw an opportunity for me to learn and grow and kind of advance in my career in terms of like, I guess in terms of all the other things, but really for me to be around new leaders that was going to help me grow as a professional as well. So it's always like a two-way street. I'm going to help them grow and they're going to help me grow. And I took it because it was an opportunity for my next 5 to 10 years of me looking at like, how do I advance an opportunity, advance a unit and then advance like, how do I grow like 10 times the amount I would have grown had I stayed in the job where I think I was pretty much going to do what I was going to do.
So it sounds like taking this new job has been, I guess, more of a challenge to yourself to replicate what you did at Akron, but maybe even make it better. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to replicate anything of what I did at Akron. I think I'll replicate kind of my entrepreneurial approach, but what I produce will be entirely different, which was part of the appeal. Some of the work that I'm going to do now is going to be, look, I'm going to say this for the sake of the podcast, right? Like professionally speaking, and I would tell anybody this as I coach them. So I look at my role as like, what is my role responsible for? So that's a different answer than what I'm going to give now. So if you were to ask me like, what does the associate dean do? Then I have a whole set of answers that they don't tell me to say, but I believe that role, like that's bigger than me, should answer for what we're supposed to do. you ask Kevin Smith what he's trying to do, like all that. And then if you ask me, like, well, because I have 20 to 30 or more years of working left, because if I'm 41, then I got to like probably 70 in higher ed, right? And you think that you'll retire when you're like 55, 60 and you're working your rear ends right now to retire early. And when you find out about the people that actually make it like really well, they don't retire. They don't know how because they like that relevance and I guess they're having fun. So I do see myself working till like 65, 70 anyway, just because I love like the life. I like what we do and I think we have enough freedom. So look, I'm around people that are insanely better than me all the time. And that was litmus test number one. It's like, will I be around people? I was like that at Akron when I first joined there. And I didn't leave because I wasn't in that situation. I just have a new group of those people where I get to be supremely uncomfortable again for at least like probably 2 to 3 years. I mean, it's intensely uncomfortable. Everything from my email system to my drive to my commute to my HR system. I mean, every little shred of my being is like different now. And then the people I'm around, I mean, are just like at Akron, first class people. I mean, they're just intensely. They could be anywhere in the world, and they choose to be in Cleveland, Ohio. And that's one of the things I loved about Akron was you have people that can literally be anywhere, and they choose to be someplace. And it reminds me of a time when I worked with Jim Tressel, the famous football coach at Ohio State, who became for a couple of years the vice president at Akron. When I was at Ohio State with Jim Tressel, and then I came to Akron, and he was the vice president, and I was the new director of this big leadership. And we were at Smucker together. And then we went to Ohio State reunion together. One time I asked him, I can ask you a question. At the time, he was going to become the president of Youngstown State or the president of Akron, right? So, but his choices were going to be to himself, either Akron or Youngstown. Here he is, Jim Tressel. He was making, like Division I football coach money, and for years. And here he was going to choose between becoming the president of a university in Northeast Ohio or Northeast Ohio when he could literally be anywhere in the world that he chose to be and be very happy there. And so I asked him, I said, how do you keep choosing this place over and over when it seems to me as I just moved here, people, knock it all the time. They're like, well, it's just Akron, it's just Cleveland, it's just Northeast Ohio. And he said, well, like, Kevin, that's a great question. He was like, I decided a long time ago that paradise is wherever I am. And I've really heard something similar from super successful people. Like one of our new co-deans, Andrew Medvedev, is like a retired at like 43 years old, Morgan Stanley partner, right? Investment banker. Mm-hmm. And he went to Case, Russian immigrant, made his way up, partner at Morgan Stanley by the time he's like 30 something. I don't know if he retired technically, but he's not working there anymore. And he's got a great house in Shaker Heights. Now I moved his wife from New York City here to become the dean, the co-dean of Weatherhead School of Management, right, which is a preeminent business school. And he's chosen again to be in a place that he loved. I like to be around people that choose to be places and then make that place great, and then that just makes me move to want to be better. It's not easy as saying that, but it's something where it was the right time for me to like learn to become better, and then also use whatever I've learned along the way to make a place better as well.
Yeah. No, that's amazing, Kevin, to hear that. Again, you truly love what you do, and again, you're making impact in everywhere you go. So I can just ensure that in the next couple of years, there's going to be different universities across Ohio, across maybe the United States, just trying to pull Kevin. Oh, we want Kevin here, because we see what he did over there, we see what he did over there. So it's amazing that you're making an impact everywhere you go, and you're having fun while doing it, right? So my question for you is it was actually just when Sean informed me of what the Leadership Institute was the first time I actually heard of it, right? And I'm a fifth year at the University of Akron. I study biomedical engineering. That's neither here nor there, but I've been at the university for 5 years, and this is my first time hearing about it, right? And I wish I knew about it earlier because I would have loved to be a part of this, right? So I guess really my question I'm leaning towards is what was the driving force to starting the Leadership Institute, as well as I know there's so many companies nowadays and businesses, and even just what we need in the world is so many more leaders, right? I think that's just one thing that we want to cultivate more of is leaders, right? And I think we can understand why, but I also want to know, like, what does the Leadership Institute do to cultivate that leadership? So why did you build it, and what does the Leadership Institute do to cultivate that leadership in future leaders?
Yeah, well, so that's a lot of great questions, and I'll try to answer succinctly. And I'll trust that you're editing this so you can like take my long-windedness down. So I didn't found it. So I mean, it was founded by the idea from who was the dean at the time, Ravi Krovi, who was the dean of University of Akron College of Business School for 10 years.
Okay.
Ravi was like just an outstanding dean, and they had this opportunity with some leaders that were at Smucker at the time, the CFO, the CHRO, and the CIO were all Akron College of Business grads. They had been there from company $200 million to $7 billion, and they were part of that leadership transition with Richard and Tim Smucker. They literally left it better than when they found it. And three of them came into Akron with Richard Smucker and said, we really don't have a presence at our number one place that we recruit people from. It's a $7 billion Fortune 500 company. And they saw Akron's College of Business as their number one source of candidates at the time. So they decided to make a gift of $1 million for some purpose. And then they wrapped around like, well, where's the College of Business want to go? And leadership was the thing. Leadership skills and communication skills has been a trend in universities for about 20 years. When I was at OU, it was becoming a trend. And I'll tell you, it's peaking now. I mean, so I took their money and I decided that I'll go back to where I was going with the peaking thing, but like I just basically took their money. I'm like, look, if they're going to make a gift that's unheard of, then we need to do unheard of type things. Like we need to do things
That's
that
good.
like no one's doing. And so that the philosophy was very simple. Let's turn one big gift into many gifts. That means students are going to get this unique opportunity to do things that like when they go to that job. My vision was when a student goes to a job interview after participating in Leadership Institute, they have stories that no one else can talk about. Like that's it. Because you're going to go to a college of business and roughly they're going to learn the same curriculum, the same stuff, engineering schools. You're going to get some different programs, different faculty at different places, and that's all great. And different colleagues, that's I can't compare schools, right? But I can say that very few people are going to have true experiences outside of internships. And I can't force you to do an internship, but in a leadership program, we can actually make you do really like practical things, like spending a day with the U.S. Army in a job interview sounds like, okay, I haven't heard that one yet. And what happens is the interviewer will start asking you questions like, oh, wait a minute, finally a student that's different from the other students, right? So let's dovetail that to like what's happening now. So yeah, the leadership program did all those things, and they're great leaders. Kim Heffernan and Jeff Clem running that show now at Akron, and really we passed the torch to the right people. They've been really running it for like 3 years. And when I was there, like we had a strong partnership with the dean of the engineering school. That's how I met Sean. But that was more of the dean of the engineering school's issue. Like we always wanted to partner with them and like the transitions, and I'm sure they'll get back on track. Um, but look, the reality is I was at Goldman Sachs headquarters in Lower Manhattan a few weeks ago, and Andrew Medvedev, the coding and I were meeting with their head HR, global HR folks. I met with JP Morgan Chase's global recruiter, right? We just had Eaton Company, they have 5,000 global openings right now, and they're headquartered in Beechwood, Ohio, but they have 5,000 openings globally. And what they all had in common, and this is not to single them out, it's just where I was recently, all of them said the same thing. They're like, we really love where students go to school and all, and we really love what their degrees are in. But by the time they get to us, by the time they graduate from a good school, we're already assuming that they're pretty good. I mean, what we want to know now is, do they have great leadership and communication skills? Because if you're graduating from universities that are standardized for the most part, I mean, they're pretty much going to get a relatively same or similar type of person, unless you have a specialized master's or a specialized undergraduate degree, which is a fairly rare concept, and most schools have some specialization. But what they're looking for now, the thing that all employers are looking for is, can you communicate? And it's not just about like, can you communicate like with email? And everyone will say it. But here's what I'll tell you. Everyone says it, but they say it wrong. Like they don't like it's like employers know what they're trying to say, but like a kid that's learning what they're not looking, they don't know how to articulate what they want. They don't
There's
really
some
know what it
nuance,
is that they're trying to say. So what I think they're trying to say is that, look, it's not that students don't know how to email appropriately. Like, the difference between an appropriate email and a not appropriate email. Like you're a college student, right? Like you've seen it, you just don't do it all the time. And then the moment that you do it someone's way, you learn from someone else they want it a different way. So it's confusing. And then text me or don't text me or do this or don't do that, or I don't use this, and the moment you say like I'm on social media and an employer says to you, like, oh, well, we don't really buy into all the social media stuff. The next employer says, all we want is your social media skills. So it's confusing for a college student now because employers don't quite articulate it. But here's what I'll tell any college graduate. is like you have to become multilingual. You have to be able to understand that you have to be adaptable, you have to be agile in your learning ability. So that means your communication skill has to take on multiple form, almost as if you were traveling to like 10 different countries next week. You have to approach like interviewing as if you're going into 5, 10 different countries. And you're gonna have to learn the cultural norms, the customs, the types of skills. And it's not about which skills you're trying, like which country you're going to. It's the fact that you can adapt. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's good.
That
Yeah.
I mean, I'll bake money on that. So give me the student or the employee or the 50-year-old or the 30-year-old that can adapt, that has the skills to adapt their communication skills in a way that's agile enough to meet the demands of whatever place they want to be, right? I'm going through this right now at Case. My feedback to myself is like, man, I gotta be more direct. I mean, I just spent 10 years like negotiating everything I had, right? I was a constant negotiator. At Case, I have a different role. And I'm like, man, after 59 days or 60 days, I just told like my VP, I'm like, look, I'm gonna have to be like more direct. He's like, you're right. And that's me adapting, right? But it took me 55 days to get there. That's not a very long time, but that's my job, is to figure it out fast, because no one's going to tell you at higher levels, and no one's going to tell you if you don't get the job. So you got to figure that out for yourself. But if employers can't tell you that, and your parents can't tell you that, and your faculty aren't telling you that, who's telling you that? A leadership program is. So that's my roundabout way of saying is like communication skills and leadership skills are golden, but they don't all look the same.
And I can attest to you from my time and my experience in the Leadership Institute. I went in there as like a wide-eyed freshman, thinking I knew what leadership was and that I kind of had an idea of how to lead people. But then that whole intuition was just turned on its head. And like Kevin mentioned, going to a military base and doing 8 hours of like quote unquote military training on a Saturday for just leadership exercises, that's stuff that I've talked about in job interviews. That's stuff that I've talked about to companies, even in just in networking environments. So it's those experiences that are outside of the traditional collegiate norm of any of our engineering classes, any business classes, nursing classes, whatever, because in essence, it's an organization that is not solely limited to the College of Engineering or the College of Business. Like there are a variety of different majors and a variety of different colleges that take part in this. So I kind of want to shift gears here a little bit and dive into, Kevin, your financial background. And really, my question is, what does financial literacy mean to you?
So let me be clear. I'm not like a certified financial anything, but as Sean knows me well enough to know that I'm really into it. And I've practiced enough things and I'm around all this stuff. So I just want to make it clear that nothing while I'm giving a certified financial advice, right? So, but look, I'll tell you, it works for me. I grew up in a place where my parents were awesome parents. I can't say enough. I'm a first generation college grad, right? So, but I also learned the hard way. And I've had an intense fear my entire life because I've seen what happens when you don't plan. And I've seen what happens when you don't do your accounting right. And I've seen what happens when you're like, you don't do your taxes appropriately, even if you're not even like nothing wrong. I mean, you're not trying to do things wrong. You're not trying to hurt anybody, but there's a duty that every citizen has to get their stuff right. And I mean, and you don't feel like it matters because you might not make enough money that you think it matters, but it matters. And I've seen the direct results of really well-intentioned people making really big mistakes that had 20-year impacts. Um, so I kind of built my life along the things where I'm in universities my life, right? And I'm around smarter than people than me all the time. And look, the the simple thing is one, always like just don't invest in things that like don't matter in like 10 years, right? I mean, for your house, for your life, think about, I think everybody thinks that in order to save money, they have to get a raise. When the reality is you can probably save more money and give yourself a raise. So well, I remember when I was at Ohio University, my very first job out of grad school, I didn't make a lot of money as my first gig, right? But I was happy to have a good job. And I got a 5% bonus my first year, which was like, man, that was great. It was a fairly significant amount of money to me at the time because I had budgeted a life that was like 20% less than what I was making at the time. So I felt like I was doing all right. But then I didn't get a raise for like the recession hit 2008, and I didn't get a raise for like the next few years. So I decided like, man, I cannot, instead of getting mad at my employer, because it was a function of economic hard times, and I chose a space where I'm not going to be getting like bonuses as regularly like as like a company. I've also had unlimited freedoms to work. So I kind of, to me, currency is not just money. It's like your identity. It's the relationships you have. It's how much freedom you have to make your own
Yeah,
choices, start your own
it's true.
businesses. So first, I do want to mention like there are multiple forms of currency. So then I decided like I was gonna like, where can I make as much money in doing using my trade in my currency of freedom into alternative forms of revenue. So I've always strived to have 5 to 6 different income streams. So I became a professional speaker. I looked at what I can do well. I can talk to anybody. Clearly, I'm just blabbering here. I could talk on the fly. I could promote stuff. I'm good at thinking about things in unique ways. So I decided that, wow, I'm speaking to people all the time. Why don't I get paid for this? And then I found out that there's people making money off of like turning people into professional speakers. That's like a scam. Like you don't, no one can certify. I mean, people can certify you, but it doesn't mean anything. It's a business. You get your customers by go getting your customers by getting off your rear end and go making it. I discovered I can make more in 1 hour speaking than I would for a 5% raise all year. So I do that, and I would just go out and speak. And I decided also what my scope was. I'm not going to go out and be a professional speaker like 500 times a year. I don't want to be away from my family all the time. So I thought I'll speak this many times, and that will be an income stream. I started like the 700th CrossFit gym in the world at the time, as like there was like 25,000 now, but I had like number 710 or something like that. I sold it in 9 months, and I put 100% of that in my daughter's 529 savings account when she was like 9 months old. And I've never paid a dime. I don't need to save for her college. Between that, I get free tuition in case for if she decides to go there. It was a good investment, right? I never touched it, put it in without the taxes, and I mean, paid what I had to pay, and it was fine. So I always think about like every time I make money, I don't think about the next place I can spend it, unless the next place I can spend it would be an investment. And so the best investments you can make are either in yourself or they're in your future. And so my PhD is something I pay for out of my pocket. At least, and it cost me like 12 grand a year, and I paid for that out of my own pocket. But I did that a few years ago, thinking that when my next job opportunity came up, having a PhD or being en route to a PhD wouldn't matter in higher ed space. And I had a 5-year plan for when that would pay off, and it paid off in year 2.3 with a 60% return in year 2. I mean, it was a very big
That's
difference. And
awesome.
so you invest in yourself, and don't spend every dime that you have in like something that's frivolous. I mean, have fun. But if you want to save money, think about how much like stupid things you do, like making a cup of coffee at home. You're not depriving yourself of the good life by making a cup of coffee at home. It's not like that cup of coffee is going to change. Like go out and get a Starbucks if that's your thing once a week. Subscribe to Akron Coffee Roasters. It's fine. It's delicious coffee, right? Do things that matter to you, but like do them at like at a place where you actually think about them as celebratory. Because if you just like took these frivolous things, multiplied them by the times that you do them, how many weeks there are in a year, and then thought about that, I bet that you could give yourself a 10 to 15% salary increase every year by just cutting out bad habits of yours. And so I look at life that way. I mean, our house that we live in is like great. I mean, we bought it before we had kids, so we're outgrowing it a little bit right now, but like it's like I don't know how much percentage of our income it is, but it's enough that if I lost my job, we wouldn't be worried about not having a house. And that was important to me. Like we have a fine neighborhood, a fine house, and all these things that we could have upscaled over and over again. But I found that the people that have the most amount of money, and that's not me, like the CIO of Smucker, he lives in the same house he's lived in for 32 years. Uh, 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 One of my clients, he makes 1.1 million a year, and he lives in the same house that he lived in for 28 years. They just bought new windows for the house, so it's a big expense. So you'll find that the Millionaire Next Door, that book, it's a fabulous book. There are people that are
I
doing
love that
it.
book. Yep.
Yeah, the people that do that, like, are the people that have the most money. The people that like buy a Porsche when they work like a fine job. I don't want to knock any gigs, but if you work at a place that you probably can afford a car payment for the Porsche, but then you're not living, in a really great house or apartment. maybe you're spending it on the wrong thing to feed something else in your life that's not that. So I always ask
Under
myself,
accumulator of wealth.
right, yeah. I mean, I'll have a good bottle of bourbon once in a while. I'll treat myself at the end of the year. You got to have stuff that you do.
Yeah.
But put your money into yourself, into your family, and in your future, and there will be a future for you.
Yeah.
And that's always paid off for me.
That's awesome. And and I love that you referenced that book, Kevin, because that is one of the books we've talked about so many times on this podcast. Again, that was The Millionaire Next Door. There's so many people. Again, it was, I think, let's see, average accumulator wealth or under accumulator wealth, and then prodigious accumulator wealth, right? And the people who don't necessarily look the millionaire status, but are the millionaire status, they are the prodigious accumulators of wealth, right? But the people who look like they're millionaires, but aren't necessarily net worth millionaires or don't actually have those kinds of assets, they are the under accumulators as well. So that's a great book, Kevin. I'm glad you referenced that. And I love the
So
story of
many
what you did.
people.
You're
Yeah.
right. So many.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, the people that you'll meet, the older you get, you're going to meet a lot more people that have more wealth.
Yeah.
And what you're going to find about them is that you had no idea.
Yeah.
And one thing I learned about Northeast Ohio is that there's so much of that. I mean, there's one of the wealthiest people I know, retired when he's 52. He's a big philanthropist in Akron, and he drives the same car that he's driven for 11 years. When I met the former CIO Smucker, he was driving a Kia Optima. And he was like, I like the highest end of the lowest end car. And when I met him, I'm like, that's fantastic. I mean, I'm not saying don't enjoy your money, but I am saying that there are probably better investments that you'll make. And then, look, the best quote I ever heard was, say less than you know and have more than you show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry to
That's
cut you
real.
off. By the way. That was you just reminded me of a few things, but
Oh no, you're perfectly fine. And again, we very much appreciate that you referenced that book because again, that's what we tell a lot of our listeners is that you really need to listen to that book because it differentiates. Again, I think it references two doctors who make the same amount, but it's how you manage it. It's how you manage it, right? So it's very interesting, and I'm glad you referenced that book. One thing.
Our university, Akron's are full of those people, by the way. I mean, I just want to let you know
Oh,
that,
really?
like, full, just absolutely full of the
Prodigious
people
or under
that,
accumulator? Which one?
prodigious, I mean, people that just have tons more than they ever show, and they're living a
Yeah.
lifestyle that, like, they're living a nice, very comfortable midlife. I mean, they're probably living in a
That's awesome.
$290,000 house, market value
Yeah.
today, that they bought for about 190, that
Yeah.
had 4 to 5 bedrooms, had 3,000 square feet, and they probably didn't do anything differently. And they're probably, I know that they're millionaires, and they're
Yeah.
not changing their life as their income stream goes up. They're not
Right.
changing what they own. They're not walking in with Gucci bags.
Yeah.
That whole thing is for someone else. And there's some types of people that have those types of things because they can afford it so much that it's like you going to Walmart and buying, like a bag of chips. I mean, they're so wealthy. There's the people that have to stress for that amount of money that buy those things. That have some sort of thing about them that
Yeah.
I think once you want to buy that idea in your life, um, it just changes the way you see. But find role models that are living that life and then emulate them. Because once you find out that there's a normal undercurrent of those people, then aspire to be them. It puts you into a different club of cool people than the people that you're trying to be cool that you'll never meet in your life, like Kim Kardashian. You'll never meet Kim Kardashian. She doesn't care about you. She doesn't care what you wear, but she wants to make you think that she cares what you wear. But like, strive to be like the great people that are surrounding you that actually will give a damn, like what you achieve. And then you'll find you're in a whole club of people that you'll have a lifetime of value from.
Yeah, and that couldn't be closer to the truth, and I appreciate that's so real, Kevin. I appreciate that so much. And really, the question I also really want to ask is, I'm curious. Right, I'm hearing all these great things about you, Kevin, and I do definitely want to connect with you after this podcast. But how was Kevin? Let's say I want to say back in the day, but you're not. Again, you're a wise man for a 40-year-old. You're killing it, and I love it. And I appreciate you, Kevin. But for a lot of our listeners, we're like college students, if not even high school students. We have some of our listeners who are high school students. What are some things that Kevin did? Or Kevin wished he did back in the day, quote unquote, to set himself up financially. Like, what were the times back in college, the times back in high school? If we kind of wind it back a little bit, what were some of the things that Kevin did? Was Kevin the exact same the way he was now, or really, avid with his money, very good with his money, or was he a little bit different? Like, how was Kevin back in the day?
Kevin was always good with his money because Kevin saw the alternative.
That's awesome.
Look, the gift that I was given was, look, it wasn't like we ever were afraid. I mean, there was a time in my life we were on food stamps for a little bit. But look, one of my people I coach and is a friend now that makes $1 million a year wasn't this a food stamps too growing up. I mean, there's something about people that have a disadvantage and that's why I'm such a big educator. Is like because it was the silver bullet in my life. So, look, one is live your life in a way that like always be thinking about your future. Make yourself 5-year contracts or bets. Like don't imagine that
that.
your life is always going to be like whatever you're going to do tomorrow is going to be what you do forever. It's not going to be your world. That hasn't been my world. It's not going to be a high school kid's world. You're going to have to be more financially savvy than ever because about 50%, 60% of your income is going to come from your own like entrepreneurial skills. And you have to have some sort of, you don't have to be like an accountant, but you have to, like QuickBooks is not the answer, but you have to understand like it's like accounting is measuring money, but finance is the science of making it and growing it. And you can make a ton of money by just putting in a little bit of money now and watching it appreciate over 40, 50 years. If you get the Acorns app, like that's one of my favorite things in the world. Acorns is great. I have it. I don't put a lot of money in it, but I put like 35, $50 a month. I have one for my kids now too. And I love the Acorns app because you can dial it up to whatever age you are in your portfolio that diversifies the risk. And so like I can see how my a few $1,000s I just swirl away in there just for fun that I never miss will grow to be what I call my nursing home program. Like so all my insurances and my retirement accounts will fund that anyway. But this is my oh shit money
That's
where
awesome.
like when we think that the inflation goes up, then I have this nest egg of like, and right now my thing shows like $197,000 when I'm like 90, well, not 92, like 82 years old. So if I could live to be 82 years old, then this 35, $50 a month I throw in that thing, like I have enough years left. And when you're a high school kid, that's how Warren Buffett became rich. He didn't put away a ton of money. He put away a little bit of money and let time do the work. That's what finance is. So you learn that early on. To establish credit, you do need some sort of credit. Like I took out a small car loan for $1,000, and I basically paid $100 a month for like a year. Basically, with my interest and all that stuff, it came up to $1,200 at the time. So I bought my first car, when I was 16. I had cash to buy it because I was insane about saving money, but I did take out $1,000 loan because I knew I could pay it back, and I knew I'd have credit. By the time I was 18, I had superior credit, and I've always had at least like a 790 credit rating. And credit is currency if you use it right. So credit cards are not currency. That's a scam. That's a ripoff. They're good if you can train yourself to use them appropriately,
Right.
but have
Right.
strong credit and protect it at all costs because that
Mm.
is your financial freedom all your life. My final thing is when you're investing in yourself, and I'll get into college here for a second, and this is on the fly. This is my biggest pain in the ass right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care where you go to school. Make sure you can afford it. So since you're talking to a higher ed guy, and I'm not speaking on behalf of Case Western or Akron or any place. I've been to 4 universities. Um, I'll tell you this: when you go to university, right? It still pays off. According to 2022, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this is what I study. So this is like you can look this up. The
Mm.
average, it's called human capital investment. The amount of money
Okay.
you put in and the money you get off of putting into yourself, right? The average payoff for a 4-year college degree, no matter where you go to school, no, but the average is still $850,000 lifetime payoff, almost $1 million more money than if you just went to high school alone. That accounts for all the YouTube stars, all the TikTok sensations, all the things that you think you're going to do when you're in high school that are just going to hit it big. The reality is people that hit it big on social media are business people. They're not randomly putting out like a skateboard. I mean, that guy with the skateboard vid and the cranberry drink,
The
you get
cranberry guy,
lucky,
yeah.
right? You're going to get lucky. There's always the one person in a billion that get lucky, right? You are not going to get lucky like that. You have to be a business person to be good on social media. That's just the nature of it. Algorithms, finance, followers, they're not by accident, right? So you have to be a good business person there. So when you go to university now, it's still with all that crap that you can get from being a TikTok star, $850,000. A master's degree still accounts for an additional $650,000 lifetime value after the age of 32. If you're 18, 32 seems like a world away. That time comes super fast. And when you're 32, think about it this way. You still have another 30, 35 years ahead of you that you can be banking extra money. If you put away 20% of that extra $850,000, you're going to be a millionaire like 5 times over by the time you even get close to retirement, just because you went to college. The average debt of a college student, undergraduate, 4-year degree seeking, if you watch social media, you'd think it's probably about $150,000 average college debt. People are drowning in debt. It is true that a certain segment of people are drowning in debt. It's not true for 4-year undergraduate degrees at all. The average college debt nationwide, $28,000. You do that times a 5% interest over 30 years. If you want, or 10 years, if you want to pay that back, the cost of you having a different life, it can come down to like a $200 a month loan. What's your car loan? I mean, people are more than happy to take out a $600 car loan to feel like a boss driving down the street for a car that's going to die in 5 years, but they're not going to be willing to pony up $200 a month to change their life forever. So college to this day, no matter what people are saying about it, statistically speaking, is still paying off. I don't get a dime for saying that. But here's the thing though, colleges will sell you like TJ Maxx. So a private school, make sure you can, there's really no fundamental difference between a private school and a public school. Public schools were invented to give you the same education a private school would at a cost that was subsidized by the public. So you're basically paying for it anyway, right? So going to Ohio State like 12,000 a year, or an OU like 11,000 a year, and Akron for like, what is it, 11,000 a year now? Like at a double ACSB accredited school versus a private school, which has a double ACSB accredited business school, virtually the same output. It comes down to your network at that point, right? There's some specialized programs that are different. But what happens is like Marist College in New York City will throw a $60,000 tuition and they'll give Zach like, well, you get a $30,000 scholarship. You're still paying $30,000 to go, but you feel like, man, that school gave me a $30,000 scholarship. So I got to go there because I can't turn down this opportunity. It's like that sweater that came from Nordstrom at TJ Maxx. Well, it used to cost $90, but now I get it for $30. You're still spending $30 for a sweater. It may not sound like a lot, but if you make that
That's
mistake
business,
over again, so you're going to have a $120,000 student loan bill for a 4-year degree for a place when you could have gotten at like University of Akron or whatever you want to, you name the place, for like 5 out the door, a year out the door for 20 grand. And you're going to go off and have the same or similar opportunities and then go to a great grad school and get scholarships for that kind of thing. Like, so I'm not saying like don't go to a private school. I'm just saying by the time you go, that you say yes, don't go because it feels good to get that scholarship. Go because you can actually afford to go and minimize the amount of loans you take out, but do take out some loans because the investment still pays off. Just don't take out a loan for a granite countertop in a fancy apartment. Like suck it up for a few years and get your granite countertop when you're like an adult. And that's where people are spending their loan money. It's on stupid crap like that. So spend it wisely, but don't make that mistake. You can go to college and go and do like super well. Go to community college for 2 years, and then trade up to Ohio State for the last 2 years and rack up like 8 grand in debt, and then go off and make like 50, 60 grand right out of school. You'll never think about it. So don't make those mistakes just because a private school throws a lot of scholarship money at you. You're still going to pay 30 grand a year out the door to do it.
Absolutely. College pays off if you know how to do it right. Absolutely.
Statistically speaking, it's still paying off. Yep.
Before I kick this back over to Sean to kind of wrap things up, I wanted to rewind a little bit and tie up what Kevin said about what financial literacy means to him. And it sounded like in one sentence, it could be summarized is that financial literacy means knowing where to put your money, which in most of the cases is in yourself or in your future. And as well, at the beginning of that same monologue, Kevin said that while he's not financially licensed or accredited, he's just really, really into it. And I think that also really describes us very well too. I wanted to acknowledge that I think that's a really good way to put it.
You're my people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Quick question too. Really quick question. Well, I guess we'll see how far it goes. But in terms of what you're doing, even for your future generations, in terms of your daughter, and if you have other kids as well, is what are you doing? Because you mentioned 529, which is awesome. We mentioned that a few times on the podcast. what are some things that you are doing to set up your kids for their future? Again, you mentioned 529. Are there other things? Because I've heard of other people who are even putting credit cards in their kids' names at like the age of 3 months. Like what are some amazing things that you're doing to set up your kids? Even maybe if it's like just teaching them, like budgeting with them. What are some things you're doing to set your kids up?
What I think is, you should talk to your kids about, kids should know that money doesn't grow on trees, and that it's a privilege that you're going to watch over the next 20 years a large income disparity. It's just going to get worse in our country, where you're going to have a service industry, and you're going to have people that are serving other people and people that are being served. That's really going to be our whole world. And so AI is going to
We're
create
here. We're here to close this gap. We're here to close that gap.
Well, look, you're hopefully talking to people that want to be the people that are going to be served. At some point, you're always going to have folks that are in the service, and I'm speaking of the guy that paid his way through college by being in the service industry. And I had the chance when I was working at Red Lobster. That's one of the ways I paid my way through school. I had 3 jobs, and I had the chance to become a general manager, and go on the management track at Darden International, which was really cool. At the time, I was going to become a high school teacher making like $38,000 a year, which seemed awesome because I didn't have a gig at the time. And then, or I get $90,000 being, at the time, I was like, man, I could never imagine making $90,000. These guys worked like 70, 80 hours a week, and like to be that, I'm thinking, wow, I could sacrifice 80 hours a week to make nine. At the time, that seemed like, why wouldn't I do that? I discovered there's a different way. I found out that if you think about this and you really understand your forms of currency, you could decide what you're willing to trade, what you're not willing to trade, right? And I think that every person has to know that. I think that the parents should talk to their kids about what their non-negotiables are. Like, what do they care about so much that you're willing to trade it for? And they should learn the value of money. Like this year, my 13-year-old bought her own Christmas presents for everybody. When I was 13, I got pissed that I discovered that to buy Christmas presents, I had to get parents for my money from my parents, which didn't make sense to me. So I started my own business, like floating candles. At the time, Yankee candles were becoming a big thing. So I discovered like you can make candles for like pennies on the dollar, and the least the cost of goods sold was like a little bit of wax and wax floats. And I made like $3,000 one Christmas. I was 13. I was the richest like kid in my high school. I came for like nothing. I'm like, I had 3,000 in cash sitting there, and I blew a lot of it. Then I bought like a leaf blower, and I discovered like, well, I can go out there and rake yards, but if I rake yards, it takes me like 3 hours to do someone's yard, or I can leaf blow someone's yard in like an hour. And so, it was like time value money. These are like things that I just taught myself because I'm like, I can just do it faster. I can do more efficiently. I can make more money. And I think that those are the types of things that parents need to talk about with their kids. And when their kids show some ambition to start their own business or just appreciate the value of what it means to make their own money and then spend it on something that doesn't matter. I think parents should let their kids fail. I really do. I think failing when you're young, failure is cheap. Like even for
Yeah.
you guys, I love I know what Sean's up to, right? Like Sean's got like multiple little side businesses and all that. I say little with respect because they're like growing and they're going to be one of those things that they're like early investments for Sean. Imagine like you're doing the 20-year plan, and so this is going to pay off big for you, and they're like low cost getting in, and they're going to be like great getting out of. Um, like you should fail now. And you should welcome the failure, and you should let your kids fail. I don't know about the credit card thing, but I do think there's something because credit cards are slippery slopes because you feel like you have more money than you have. But I think like if they can see what the trouble with it is with having a credit card in like a simulated format without having experience, like the depth of 20%, 7% interest that you can never get out of. I think there's some failures that they shouldn't be like they should avoid, and there's some failures they should have to experience like the emotional value of. But there's nothing more satisfying than earning your own money, like just having your own business, whether you're working full time. And I think that's what, if you're going to college or not going to college now, every kid should learn how to own their own business, even if it's tiny or if it's small. They should have some sort of but you have to have some sort of financial knowledge. It doesn't have to be great. Everyone should hire an accountant. Like, do not do it yourself. Like, even if you're an accountant, don't do it yourself. Like go out and hire someone. I pay my accountant a total of like $350 a year. It's insane how little money it costs you, and that accountant will save you more than $350 a year. And that my taxes are relatively expensive comparatively because I have 7 income streams, right? So like he's doing all my crap for me, and he's still not charging me what I think he should be charging me. But I give him a lot of business, right? So get yourself an accountant. It'll probably cost you $150 a year. Organize your stuff, do it the right way, and then have credit for yourself, whether it's a small loan, and then buy yourself something that you can then resell for later on, like a car, even though it's depreciating, and have an exit strategy. But don't buy yourself stuff that's just you're gonna throw it away. I mean, it's just it doesn't matter. And don't realizing when you're investing in yourself, there's a difference between investing in yourself and your future because my kid, that's my strategy for my kids. I'm investing in myself now to change our family dynasty, right? Whatever that's going to be. And I look at my kids, I'm like, you don't got to do better than me, but I do want you to use the opportunity that I provided you. So I don't care what you do. Like right now, my 13-year-old wants to become like a coroner or something like that. Like she's really into like what crime, stuff like that. She watches TV. Like fine, whatever. I'm not gonna like poo-poo that idea. But like, I don't really care what she does. I care that she's happy. I care that she's successful. I care that she feels satisfaction from that success. And I care that she leverages the opportunity, the foundation that she has to start off with, which is greatly different than the one I had. But what that looks like for her is different than what it looks like for me. So,
And
but don't invest in your ego, though.
Mhm. And I can attest to that too in my life and kind of what my parents taught me growing up. And they laid that financial foundation and they let me fail. They let me try to run a business in elementary school that resulted in me getting like suspended from class because I kept selling baseball cards and stuff like that. And they weren't mad
Oh,
about it.
Sean, we don't know that story. We were
So
never told
that
that
that's
story.
that's for another day. But
Okay.
no,
I
I
sold bubble gum, man. That was I got detention for that stuff. I used to go to Sam's Club because I
mhm.
found out that people were willing to pay like 3 times the market value for a pack of Bubblicious. 6th grade. It was better
Yeah.
than selling drugs.
Early stage drug dealers. Don't quote us on that. But no, it's 100% true. And teaching that stuff to your kids is monumental. And that's something that Zach Inc. and I talk about all the time for our future families is like what strategies are we gonna put in place to like set our kids up, but also teach them the value of money and the value of working hard because that's a very slippery slope. Because you don't want to give your kids too much and make them reliant on you, but you want them to struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
So we greatly appreciate all of the testimonial you've given us today, and we like to wrap up each one of our episodes with a few questions that are kind of rapid fire. Just answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. But the first question on that, since we're into 2023 now, when this will be released, what's your number one goal for 2023?
I haven't done that yet. Look, and professionally speaking, I want to spend the year learning, and I've laid out a strategy for my whole year, right? For my next 5 years, I already laid that out. So I always try to grow my income. Like last year, I had a goal, and I hit to grow my income by like X amount, and I hit most of that. It was a pretty substantial like challenge to myself, but I'm like, what the hell? And so even if I fail, and so set goals that you can't hit. I mean, like that's the one thing because set something that you like, call them stretch goals. Set something that you like, you can imagine getting to, but you don't actually know how you're going to get to it. Because if you know exactly how you're going to do it, then it's really not much of a goal. It's just like stuff to do. You're going to do it anyway. So why challenge yourself there? So every year I try to like grow something in my life. And so, I have some maintenance goals this year more than growth because last year I kind of grew so much in all the ways that like I had a kid, I'm in a PhD program, I taught in the MBA program, and I got a new job all at the same time. I wouldn't recommend any of that at the same time to anybody. So, but I grew a whole hell of a lot. So next year is going to be like leveraging off that growth and maintaining that growth to a place that's like I can manage. Because if you're growing all the time too, you're actually not getting good at some of the things that you grew into. So be smart about your growth goals. Have 5 year plans. Like make yourself 5 year bets. In 5 years, you should be a different person, or you should renew the contract with yourself. Either way, you're gonna have options. So think about what are you doing today that will get you to a place that you'll have new options in 5 years. And some of that stuff will pay off for you early. And then three is like develop really good habits. There's a really good book I love called Habits. If you haven't read that book, put it number one on your reading list. It's about the psychology of wiring yourself differently, and write things down. I swear to God, write it down, like journal. If you don't talk about it. Just do it. And make your and then find my last thing too is get rid of every hedge word in your life. Hedge words are maybes, might, would, should, could, try, might, maybe. There's nothing worse than a soft yes or a soft no. It's like going on a date. Like, you want to go on another date? Maybe. Do you want to like go have fun tonight? I don't know. Do you want to? I mean, like, are you going to make $1 million next year? I could try. Like, there's nothing worse than a hedge word. You either do it or you don't do it. Like, and even if you're going after and you fail, then you just still tried to go after something,
Yeah,
but you went
that's
all
good.
in. So like, don't bullshit yourself.
Yeah.
Like, no hedge. If you catch yourself in a hedge word, get rid of it immediately or realize that you're not going to do it anyway. So someone says, do you want to go meet up this week? And say, oh, maybe I could try. I'm definitely maybe we'll try. Like that's bullshit. That means nothing. Like, say
Yeah.
no. Like a solid no is so liberating and people respect you for it. And a solid yes means more because it means you're going to say no when you can't.
Yep.
And don't just do it for other people, do it for yourself.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
So question number two, what is, and you kind of already touched on it, but what's one book, whether it's financial, personal development, business related, that you would recommend for every individual to read?
Oh man, it depends on the occasion.
What is that one book that they have to read?
There's a lot. I have a lot of books that everybody's got to read. So man, you caught me on that one. I get categorical about this. I guess it depends for me on like what it is that somebody wants to do. If it's a finance thing, The Millionaire Story is a good one. Um, Let me tell. So look, the one that's on my mind right now is the one I just used in my MBA class I taught, and it was good enough that I had students that were buying it for their kids for Christmas. It is called Switch: How to Change Things When Change is Hard. And it's a great book. I mean, it's something where you realize that everything has to change, right? And in your life, you welcome change. Like like if you have a company and you got 15 employees, if you want to change something drastically about your company, people resist you, resist. And so people think that people don't like change, but in reality they do. Zach just got married. That's a massive change, right? And maybe at some point you might have kids. It might not be in your picture right now, but when you decide to do that, if you decide to do that, that's a massive change, right? And we plan and welcome massive upheaval in our lives at a moment's notice. We do this regularly in our lives, but when you ask people to do it for like a job, they resist it. So the question is, so sociologists ask themselves like, what is this? What happens? And so they kind of narrowed it down to what are the things that happened in people's lives, and then how you as leaders can actually help people decide. And one of the tidbits I give it to you is like, you don't change people, you change their situation. And I think that little nugget there, among the many nuggets of that book, change your situation, right? If you're not happy in your life, you don't like what you got, or if you don't if you don't think that you can grow your income, for example, or grow your savings enough, change your situation. It may not happen for you tomorrow, but make a plan. There's no reason you can't go to college. Go to community college for a couple of years. And it's almost free these days, right? I mean, and if you can't go to community college, the problem is not the college or the education. The problem is you. Like, you're not, at some point you just got to realize that you're the problem, right? And so the book Switch is a really enjoyable read. It's got a lot of great stories, a lot of little case studies that are really more like is like, interesting stuff to read. So Switch: How to Change Things and Change What's Hard, by the Heath brothers.
You can't change the person, you got to change the situation. I like that a lot. Question number three, if you had to recommend one guest for us to have on this podcast, who would that person be?
Jimmy Malone.
Absolutely.
Jimmy Malone is a regional celebrity, statewide broadcasters Hall of Fame guy. He's been on the radio for over 30 some years. He has a scholarship program for college kids, has 64 students that he scholarships into his program. They go to anywhere they want to go to school as long as they can afford it. He's owned several businesses. He's talks about finance all the time. He's connected. He's I mean, I'm not gonna say he's a million next door. I wouldn't be surprised because of this. But he buys khaki pants by the bag. Doesn't care about all the crap that people care about, and knows everybody. Can text Jared Brown and Mike DeWine. Jimmy Malone's a great friend, generous guy. And here's the one thing I'll tell you about Jimmy that Jimmy's taught me is probably one of the best investments you'll ever make is not in financial stuff. It's in other people. There's a satisfaction you're going to get about putting aside a part of your income for other things that mean something to you, that give you purpose. The dividends there will pay off greater than anything we've talked about today, guys. I mean, I'll tell you, like his scholarship program, 64 kids, right? But he's been doing it for 30 years. So there's probably grandkids from the students that he got to college. So I don't know what investment's going to matter more. I can't speak for him, but I would imagine if I was doing that. So the payoff there has got to be huge. So same for me working with college students from like 20 years, like 15 years ago. I mean, I'm seeing them now. Like every college kid I work with, I treat them like they're going to be my friend in 10 years, right? Because they're going to be a college student for 4 years. They're going to be an adult for the rest of their lives. So I always treat them like that. So the investment, I would say Jimmy Malone or Bilal Basir. He's a sports attorney, owned his own business up in Cleveland. He coaches professional athletes on finance, and he's also their attorney. Good, supremely interesting guy to talk to. Good friends with Jimmy. Totally interesting people.
Phenomenal recommendations. We'll make that happen. And
gotta get them both.
I'll connect you if you
absolutely.
connect you if you'd like. But they teach me things every time I talk to them. I'll tell you that.
Yep. And then last question, where can our listeners connect with you and get in contact with you if they'd like to?
Yeah, personally, so my email at Case Western Reserve is easy. It's my initials. It's KAS, and the number is 402. So KAS 402 at case.edu. Again, so it's KAS 402 at case.edu. Easiest way to get a hold of me is just through email. Yeah, that's probably, yeah, or LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, but it's harder to find me there because there's a lot of Kevin Smiths out there. So you could type in Kevin Smith, maybe Associate Dean Case, and you'll probably find me that way.
Case Smith Leaders too. The
yeah,
old Twitter handle.
Kevin and Akron now on Twitter. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Hey, you guys are great. Thanks for what you're doing for people, especially for young college and high school students, especially. I mean, you couldn't be talking about a more important topic, especially right now when I think more and more people are taking advantage of people that don't know how finance works. And if just a little bit of knowledge, man, I mean, I'm not certified anything, right? But we're not worried about what the next 20 years brings. I mean, we're working for it, and we got a long way to go, but we're not in the same situation a lot of people are doing. And that's not because we have a ton of money. We have good incomes, right? But you can have a decent income and do super well in your life. And that's the lesson of the millionaire next door, right? So you can do really well and have a lot, and you can have the life that you want if you just make smart moves today.
Yeah, and Kevin, we greatly appreciate you joining us on this episode. We appreciate your time and all the wonderful wisdom you shared. Zach and Yinka, do you guys have any closing comments as well?
Kevin, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks. Congratulations on your marriage.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Kevin, I appreciate you so much, and I can just tell like you are that leader, teacher kind of guy where you will go like really in depth on your answers, and I love that. And I took so many gems from you. I know I'm definitely going to reach out to you via email, or I'll ask Sean if I can get your number or something because I'd love to connect with you, ask you a couple questions. So yeah, Kevin, I just want to appreciate you for all the gems and the time and the value provided to this podcast. I appreciate you.
Cheers to new friendships and new beginnings, and best wishes to you guys and all your listeners.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And so this has been another episode of On the Fly, a Financial Literacy Institute podcast. We hope that you have the best year yet in 2023. Have a good night.